Today on MuscleCar, learn how to make a single trip to the parts store and come home with everything you need to paint your car. Our Tribute Camaro steps outside of the COPO norm with a jet black paint job that turns the Sinister all the way up.
Hey folks, glad to see you're back with us today. We've made a lot of the mechanical transformations that we want to do to our COPO 69 Camaro Tribute car already happen, and we're well on our way to making our foot hit that pedal. We've partnered up with Chevrolet Performance to pay homage to one of the most legendary muscle cars to ever roll out of Detroit, the 69 COPO Camaro with the ultra-rare ZL1 factory racing big block. We've gotten our hands on an anniversary edition ZL1 427, number 426 out of only 427 that were made. And once we built the car around that monster power plant, keeping as close to the original COPOs as we can, she'll be ready for some serious action.
We've gotten to the part of the build where we can start prepping for the bodywork and paint on our COPO Camaro. Now you guys know that you don't want to do a bunch of mixing of manufacturers whenever it comes to paints and hardeners and that type of thing. That's just asking for trouble. So we're going a step beyond that by employing the entire BarrettJackson restoration system from prep and prime to color and finish.
It's not only a new system, it's a new way to buy paint and supplies. It's available in local auto parts stores, and you can get everything you need in one place.
For the first time, you can get abrasives, primer, color, clear, and even buffing compounds all engineered to work together. And anybody that appreciates high-end cars knows that they are synonymous with the name BarrettJackson. The bodyworking components include sanding blocks and discs, abrasives, and pads. The abrasives are available in strips that are made to work with a DA sander and an air file. The next step in the process is the epoxy primer. The primer kit contains the components needed to mix your primer for spraying. Everything you need comes in the box, including the proper hardener, mixing cup, and even gloves. It's an activated primer that features a high build body, which is ideal for sanding. And like everything in the system, it mixes 4 to 1.
As for color, the original COPO cars were no-frills, low-option muscle cars with one thing in mind: to go fast. That meant that they opted for some of the trim packages to be left out and also some of the stripe kits. That means that our car is going to be one solid color most of the way through. They have 12 colors to choose from, and these are the 5 most popular. We chose their jet black to coat our Camaro. It's a single-stage urethane that, just like the primer, includes color and hardener, mixing cup, stir sticks, strainers, gloves, and an application guide. Everything you'll need. Also, like the primer, the system is essentially built to be one-stop shopping to prevent you from having to find different components to match your paint. You can get all of this in one place, in one trip, at one time, including the clear coat as well.
The primer, color, and clear kits will each give you 5 sprayable quarts of material, which should be enough to cover any average car.
Once you put down the paint gun, you can finish up with their fine grit abrasives, the micro polish, and buffing pads. And to maintain and protect, they even offer a complete line of car care products with scratch remover, wax, wash, and detailer. It's a complete system that dramatically simplifies the process of painting your vehicle and keeping it car show worthy.
Now that you've seen what we're going to be using, we're ready to get hot and heavy on the bodywork on this thing. And while we're at it, we've got a few tips and tricks we're going to show you. We brought back Jason Anderson from Anderson Classic and Customs in Claremore, Oklahoma, to lend a hand with a part of it.
So we're at the point now that the car is blown off and ready to wipe some plastic filler on, so we're gonna mix that up and get going. Since how the quarter panel was finished off really nice and it's nice and smooth, we are putting a nice thin layer of the plastic filler on there to straighten up any imperfections on this quarter panel. As smooth as the quarter panel is, all you need is a light skim coat. It does not need to be a 1/4 inch thick or anything like that. Just one light skim coat and it should take out any of these light imperfections in these quarter panels like this. You'll be good to go. Now that our plastic filler is ready to sand, we're going to use the new BarrettJackson 40 Grit Premium Filament Abrasive to get this sanded up and ready to prime.
Jason is using the DA to rough in the bodywork, but like most things with car building, there is more than one way to skin a cat. You'll follow up the DA work with a BarrettJackson short block to massage out the more curvaceous areas.
Still ahead, knowing your filler and preventing mishaps. We check for and fix air bubbles in the plastic. Then it's time to start spraying.
Hey, we're back. Tommy and Jason are out in the prep booth still plugging away at the bodywork on our '69 Camaro Tribute car. Pretty soon that thing ought to be ready for primer.
What we plan on doing is finishing up the bodywork on our COPO Camaro with some of the BarrettJackson Restoration System abrasives. And then we're going to spray on some of their primer in preparation of color. The sanding elements that are a part of the system are resistant to clogging up, which has always been a problem with traditional sandpaper. These abrasives are designed to last up to 4 times longer than the old school stuff. When you get a little bit of buildup on the surface, just give it a good smack and it clears right up.
As you can see, we use 2 types of plastic filler on this project, each which has its own specific job. Let me show you what I'm talking about. On my mixing board here, I've got some heavy-bodied filler. This is the workhorse of the body world because this is the stuff that you use to do most of the flattening, smoothing, and sculpting that you want to achieve. And this is something else that sees quite a bit of mileage. Not as much as the heavy filler though, because it's for finer detail and finishing work. It's commonly called glazing putty or finishing putty. And you might be able to see that it has a thinner consistency than a heavy-bodied filler does, like comparing granulated sugar to powdered sugar. That's so it can fill pinholes and small imperfections easily.
Now, body filler is definitely always going to have its place in a body shop, but when using this type of stuff, there's always a few little things that you need to watch out for, and one of those are pinholes. Now, a good way to detect these things is to use compressed air and simply take an air blower and blow the dust out of it. Now, you'll find pinholes with all different types of sizes and shapes, but one thing I like to do is to use a pick and kind of dig them out. That way, whenever I fill them, it fills evenly. It doesn't come back and bite me later. And this is what I was talking about. This is just an old panel that we had sitting around the shop that we painted, and it had some previous body work done on it. And once we run it through a heat cycle, well, it had one of those boogered up spots show its face. Now, to repair this, it'll have to be sanded, filled, primed, and then repainted. And now that's a good bit of work that could have been prevented from happening all in the first place. Now that's kind of a big crater. Sometimes it takes more than one wiping to do it, or you could just glob it all on there at once and then sand it all down. Oh yeah.
We're clear over here for now. Hold it, time out, time out, time out. Yeah. We're like 4 feet from the door.
Perfect. Before you can spray anything, it's important to mask everything off, making it as tight as a drum. After all, it's just as important to keep contaminants from blowing out of the car onto the paint surface as it is to keep paint out of the car. You've got to mask up the openings of the door and then all the way around the car to the floor.
If terms like pot life and overlap make you scratch your head, then stick around and learn about the timetable you have to get your material from the gun to the car.
Hey, I hope you guys are ready to see us start spraying on our COPO Camaro. She's in the booth all masked up, and we're ready to start hitting it with some of our BarrettJackson Restoration System primer. Always refer to the data sheet on how to use the system properly. We're going to be using the BarrettJackson epoxy primer, which has an activator and has plenty of build to allow us to straighten up our car where needed. You start with the mixing cup that comes in the kit. It uses a very easy to manage 4-to-1 mixing ratio between the primer and hardener. Once it's mixed, use one of the supplied strainers to get it into the gun. At this point, you have what's called a pot life, which is the amount of time that you have to get the material onto the car before it loses the ability to adhere. Now, whenever you're tackling something like this, make sure that you use the proper safety equipment, like gloves, a paint suit, and a breathing apparatus. It's recommended to apply this primer within a temperature range of 60 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, using 55 to 65 pounds of pressure in a conventional gun. You want to apply 2 to 3 coats, spraying about 5 to 7 inches away from the surface. After about 90 minutes, we can scuff it or sand it one last time to give our color maximum adhesion. we're doing with our car is sanding it, because we are going for that maximum amount of quality in our finish. At this point, we've stepped down to the 320 to 400 grit abrasives in the BarrettJackson system, which is less aggressive than the 80 and 180 grits that we were using for the initial bodywork. Now, as a general rule of thumb, most people use 320 dry or 400 wet whenever you're sanding for paint. And you don't want to go any coarser than that, because what happens is whenever you sand the car, you're actually kind of creating these grooves, and whenever you paint over top of them, especially whenever you're using a metallic color, you're going to run into issues with the metallics looking all kind of crazy and stuff and actually following every stroke that you sand. But if you're using a solid color like a black, blue, green, whatever with no metallics in it, you usually don't run into that kind of issue. Now with dry sanding, I don't mind it because you get to see where you're at during the sanding process. But whenever you wet sand, a lot of times this stuff makes a big gnarly mess. But when wet sanding, the water flushes out all the powdered up stuff out of the paper and allows it to cut really quickly, but it is a lot more messy.
Still ahead, it's a lesson on the logistics of buffing your clear coat.
Well, our Camaro's at a point we can load up the gun, spray on some color. Been waiting for this. We're using the jet black paint from the BarrettJackson restoration system. Like the primer and clear coat, it comes with everything you need in one self-contained kit and mixes 4 to 1. The paint has a longer pot life than the primer, which is 2 hours at 70 degrees. You can spray it over primed aluminum, steel, and fiberglass. And it's non-metallic, which means if you're new to the painting game, this might be a good option for you. Plus, there are few things that look meaner than a jet black muscle car. The color we sprayed on is a single stage paint, which means you could spray it on and call it good. But we're wanting to do a little bit of buffing later on, so we're going to go ahead and spray on some clear. Not only does it add some depth and clarity to the overall finish, it gives us some extra protection as well. Being able to come back and buff out the finish of a car is one of those things that really takes a job up to the next level. And a few good coats of clear will give us ample material to do so. When you apply this clear over the top of single stage paint, it needs to happen within 24 hours of when the paint is applied. Or you can come back and scuff the color with a gray scuff pad before clearing it. Use 50 to 60 psi with a conventional gun, spraying at 8 to 10 inches. You will also want to allow 2 to 5 minutes between coats. After 24 hours, the clear is ready to be buffed using the BarrettJackson restoration system. I'm going to go ahead and tape off a part of the hood so that I can show you a comparison. We'll start with one of these 1500 grit abrasive discs and wet sand the surface with mild detergent and water. Make sure that you're working on a clean surface so that you don't accidentally scratch it up. After that, we can switch over to the 2000 grit and go back over it. Now we're going to change over to the 3000 grit and cut down those scratches. Just going to keep an eye out to make sure that we smooth out all those other grits that we had sanded with previously. Our next step to getting the hood shiny again is using this wool pad along with the rapid scratch remover. And after that, we're going to follow it up with the red waffle pad using their deep shine micro polish. Now whenever you're buffing, you always want to keep the machine moving around on the surface, because if you stay in one spot too long, you're running the chance of burning through on an area. And whenever you're buffing an edge, I always like to buff off of the edge, not onto the edge, referring to the rotation of the buffing wheel. You want to make sure that the wool pad is running off of it, because whenever it tries to buff onto it, it always bunches up. There's a real good chance you're fixing to mess up bad. you're working on enhancing the shine of a car's surface, no matter what products you're using, be prepared to spend some time. We're just going over this little bitty piece of the hood right now to show you how much you can change the look of the paint. But doing the whole car takes a pretty significant amount of manpower. Is it worth it? Well, heck, we'll let you be the judge of that. I've still got a good deal of buffing to do, and in the end, it'll be time well spent. I also think that we made a good color choice for this car.
Now the jury is still out on whether or not they actually made any black ZL1 COPOs, but from what we can tell, if they didn't, they sure should have. If you've got any questions about anything you saw on the show today,
Go over to PowerBlockTV.com.